After the episode on the Actae Peninsula, Alexander of Macedonia entered the city of Stagira riding Xanthus, followed by Balius, who had helped him guide Athos's horses across the peninsula to his cavalry waiting for him in Stagira. He rushed to deliver the good news to his teacher Aristotle, who surprised his disciple by giving him the drop game he had received from his respected tutor Plato, recommending that his generals play it for its many benefits. "Don't forget that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts," he told him as his final metaphysical lesson. After his brief stay in Stagira, Alexander crossed the Hellespont to begin his conquest of the Achaemenid Empire. Traveling with him as chronicler of his campaigns was the wonderful dropperfly, Heracles the Macedonian. Like Breezy, Alexander acquired the habit of collecting every interesting object he could get his hands on and delivering it to Aristotle at the Lyceum in Athens. After dazzling victories on the Anatolian peninsula, he easily conquered the Phoenician coast, with the exception of Tyre, an island city defended by a walled perimeter, which he destroyed after a 7-month siege. A delegation of Egyptian notables, many of Greek origin, settled in the Nile Delta, appeared at his camp and asked him, on behalf of the people, to free them from the Persian yoke. The delegation was led by the wonderful dropperfly, Sinuhe the Egyptian, who, along with the wonderful Heracles the Macedonian, kept Breezy informed of everything that happened during the campaign. Alexander entered Memphis acclaimed as a liberator and, by popular vote, was awarded the crown of the two kingdoms, proclaiming himself pharaoh, which conferred on him the rank of a divinity according to Egyptian tradition. The Macedonian was impressed by ancient Memphis and its monumentality. He visited the Siwa oasis, where the prophet of Amun confirmed that he was the son of the god. This did not surprise him because, since his trip to the palace of Thrace, Breezy had revealed his divine origin. In the western Nile Delta, he commissioned Dinocrates of Rhodes to plan and build the city of Alexandria. The Hippodamian grid plan they had drawn up was based on a large central plaza, surrounded by parallel and perpendicular streets, which facilitated the layout of the blocks due to the regularity of the blocks. There, all kinds of public buildings began to be built, with a mix of architectural styles, along with recreational areas such as theaters, stoas, and altars, as well as parks and gardens dotted with sculptures. He placed the country's finances in the hands of the astute Cleomenes of Naucratis. Full of dreams, Alexander continued his campaign, now also accompanied by the marvelous Sinuhe the Egyptian. In the spring of 323 BC, Alexander ruled from the Danube to the snow-capped peaks of the Himalayas in northern India. By now, the conqueror was followed by a flock of marvelous dropperflies. During this period, he visited Babylon, which was the capital of his empire, staying in the palace of Nebuchadnezzar II. There, he made final preparations for an expedition to surround Arabia with a fleet of 1,000 ships. Unexpectedly during a party, Alexander fainted after feeling stabbing pains in his spine and joints. His health deteriorated, and he asked his faithful friend Ptolemy, to whom he had given his precious drop game, to send for Breezy, the daughter of the wind, through the marvelous dropperflies who traveled with him. Breezy and Prometheus, riding the magical horses Xanthus and Balius, and accompanied by the protective cat Cyprus, appeared at the palace of Babylon to bid Alexander farewell. Alexander asked Breezy in a faint whisper that his body be taken to his father, the god Amun, in Egypt. After his unexpected death and his solemn funeral, the wind gods spread the news to all corners of the earth. Perdiccas, his trusted man and whom Alexander had designated as his successor shortly before his death by giving him his ring, was ratified as regent of the vast but conflictive empire. In the months following Alexander's death, Perdiccas, acting as regent, strengthened his power and appointed Ptolemy governor of Egypt and Libya, along with the promise to soon send him Alexander's body in a catafalque, which had already been built. However, Perdiccas had other plans, being in contact with Olympias of Epirus, Alexander's mother, who had deplored the plan to send her son's body to Egypt. Thanks to the marvelous dropperflies, who were well aware of everything happening in Babylon, Breezy learned that Alexander's body was being diverted and sent to Macedonia, to be buried in the cemetery of the Macedonian kings in the city of Aegae, without respecting his last wish. Thus, conspiracies and a kidnapping plan began to be hatched in the palace of Thrace. Unexpectedly, Ptolemy received a visit from Breezy, accompanied by the Titan Prometheus, the cat Cyprus, and several marvelous dropperflies who had accompanied Alexander during his victorious military campaigns, and who were planning to seize his corpse and take it to Egypt. Ptolemy, stunned, couldn't believe his luck having such long-awaited allies. While this was happening, Perdiccas, leading the army, was leaving Babylon, leaving the construction of the catafalque in the hands of a high-ranking official named Aridaeus. Due to its artistic and complex construction, this funeral chariot for transporting the body of the venerated Alexander took almost a year to complete. Finally, at the beginning of July 322 BC, the funeral procession departed, drawn by majestic steeds and guided by a bodyguard in mourning. As they approached Damascus, the officer Aridaeus, smitten by the charms of Breezy, who had accompanied him on the journey to protect Alexander's body, led the procession south toward Egypt. A hooded Breezy, riding Xanthus, with the gleaming scarab Khepri around her neck and the protective cat Cyprus on her back, smiled with satisfaction at helping fulfill her beloved Alexander's last wish as she trotted among the mourning guards of the grandiose catafalque traveling south. Perdiccas received this unpleasant news a week late and immediately sent a contingent of cavalry under the command of the commanders Attalus and Polemon to apprehend the traitor, Aridaeus. They could have captured the slow-moving catafalque, but as planned with Breezy, Ptolemy had traveled north with his army to forestall any mishap. Perdiccas's men were repulsed. Ptolemy, certain that he had the opportunity of a lifetime, wasted no time, and surrounded by his personal guard, galloped off to join Breezy and the Titan Prometheus on horseback, while the majestic catafalque was carried to the city of Memphis, the capital of ancient Egypt. There, in the necropolis of Saqqara, after a magical ceremony, Alexander's remains were laid to rest. From that moment on, Alexander would be venerated as a god. That night, under the ghostly reflections of the full moon, Ptolemy and Breezy held a profound conversation, which led them to conclude a momentous collaboration pact. This would change Breezy's plans, and, in honor of Alexander's memory, she would help turn the fledgling city of Alexandria into the cultural capital of Hellenism. Days later, when Perdiccas learned that his commanders had not recovered Alexander's body, he furiously attacked Egypt. However, strange winds twice caused his crossing of the Nile to fail, with many of his soldiers swept away by the river's turbulent waters and devoured by crocodiles. Perdiccas died at the hands of his frightened officers, who saw a divine hand in the disaster and offered the regency to Ptolemy, who politely declined. Ptolemy then provisioned the bewildered army and sent it back north, with some of his men in joint command, one of whom was the decorated commander Aridaeus. Accusing him of spying for Perdiccas, Ptolemy got rid of the scoundrel Cleomenes of Naucratis, whom Alexander had left in charge of the country after leaving on his conquests, seizing his vast revenues and embezzlement, thus removing the only check on his authority in Egypt. To top it all off, Antipater, the new regent, confirmed Ptolemy in the second division among the Diadochi, former generals of the vast empire Alexander had conquered, and in 305 BC, declared himself independent ruler, naming himself king and consequently Pharaoh of Egypt. As soon as Ptolemy became lord and master of Egypt, he set in motion the plans he had agreed upon with Breezy. In the prosperous city of Alexandria, in what is known as the royal district of the Brucheion, he commissioned the construction of a palace complex to house his family. He also ordered the construction of the Serapeum, a sanctuary for the worship of Serapis, a syncretic Egyptian and Greek deity, and the Alexandria Museum, an institution comprised of several architectural structures dedicated to the muses, goddesses who inspired the liberal arts and sciences. Among the various structures were an imposing library, a welcoming botanical garden with plants from every known country, a zoo with exotic animals, a modern astronomical observatory, and a special building for the study of anatomy, where vivisections were performed and cadavers were dissected. An artistic mansion, including a gymnasium, was built next to the library, where Breezy and his collaborators founded the Alexandrian school. On the advice of Chloris, Breezy's mother, who was returning as director of the school and, as we all know, also the director of the great library of the Palace of Thrace, Ptolemy hired the scholar Demetrius of Phalerum, a disciple of Aristotle, to organize the museum and library. The museum also had various hostel-like facilities, including a spacious dining hall, where intellectuals and scientists would receive room and board, as well as a salary, so they could forget their worldly worries and devote their time to research and other intellectual pursuits. Auditoriums, halls, and classrooms were built where they could give classes and lectures.